They bought a fertility ritual from the dark web. The baby wasn't theirs. Grief takes many forms, and the grief of those who want children and cannot have them is among the most private, most quietly devastating kinds there is. It lives in the body. It lives in the calendar. It lives in all the ordinary spaces that were supposed to become something else. I have enormous sympathy for Emma and Daniel Hartley. I want to say that plainly before we begin. They were good people in a specific and profound kind of pain, and they made the choice they made not from greed or vanity or the particular recklessness that leads some people toward dark things, but from love. From wanting a family with a completeness that had begun to feel, after 6 years, like a wound that simply wouldn't close. The dark web, as it has become, offers many things to people who need them badly enough. Most of them are what they claim to be, and merely illegal. Some of them are not what they claim to be at all. The cord arrived in a medical-grade refrigeration pack. The pregnancy succeeded. The child grew at a rate that no pediatrician could account for. By 6 months, it spoke fluent Sumerian. The last ultrasound before the birth showed not a fetus pressed against the womb wall, but a face. Adult, smiling, whispering. Emma Hartley had been tracking her cycle for 6 years when she found the listing. She was 37, a school librarian in Bristol, and the fertility journey, a phrase she had come to associate with the particular exhaustion of being processed through a system that meant well and consistently fell short, had included 3 rounds of IVF, 2 miscarriages, 1 ectopic pregnancy that had required emergency surgery, and a consultation at a private clinic in London where a doctor with a kind face had explained, in careful language, that her chances of a successful pregnancy with her own eggs were, at this stage, statistically very low. Daniel was an electrician. He had been steady throughout in the way that some people are steady. Not because they don't feel things, but because they have decided, quietly and without announcement, that their stability is something they can offer when other things aren't available. He cried alone. Emma knew this. She didn't raise it. They were 6 years deep in a grief that had become structural, part of the load-bearing architecture of their life together. She found the forum through a chain of links she would later be unable to reconstruct. A closed community, invitation only, the kind that doesn't name itself directly. The members were people in similar circumstances, all of them past the point of conventional medicine, all of them in the specific register of desperation that makes unusual things feel proportionate. The listing was pinned. It had no seller name, no feedback rating, no shop page, just the description and a contact form. Traditional fertility binding, pre-modern methodology, success rate not measurable by clinical standards, but consistent in observed cases, requires biological material from a lineage with confirmed life, includes preserved umbilical cord, stillborn, consented, binding instructions, support contact for the 40-day activation window. Price, £2,800. This listing does not guarantee a child. It guarantees a pregnancy. She looked at the listing for 3 days before she showed it to Daniel. He looked at it for 2 days. They talked about it for 1 evening, carefully, quietly, with the specific gravity of people making a decision they know falls outside the category of ordinary decisions, and they agreed. The cord arrived 8 days later in a refrigeration pack designed to transport biological samples, sealed with a medical wax she didn't recognize. Inside, vacuum-packed in sterile material, was a length of preserved umbilical cord, dark, desiccated, barely 3 inches long, and a folded instruction sheet printed on paper that felt oddly dense, as though it had been pressed for a very long time. The instructions were specific and unambiguous. A 40-day activation period. The cord to be kept at body temperature, worn against the skin, day and night, in a cloth envelope close to the navel. On the 40th day, a short spoken blessing in a language the sheet transliterated phonetically. No candles, no circles, no elaborate ritual mechanics. The seller's note at the bottom read, in what Emma found to be a surprisingly conversational tone: "The work is already in the cord. You are providing the environment. Try not to overthink it." She wore the cord for 40 days. The pregnancy test was positive on day 43. Emma cried. Daniel cried. They sat on the bathroom floor for 20 minutes and held each other and experienced, for the first time in 6 years, something that did not hurt. The cord that Emma had worn against her skin for 40 days was not a preserved stillborn umbilical cord. It was considerably older than that, and it had come from a source that the listing had accurately described as a lineage with confirmed life while declining, through the careful use of a non-specific phrase to explain what that meant. The cord was a passage, a structure of biological and occult mechanics that had been used across several centuries and by several different entities as a loophole in the standard protocols governing incarnation. Normal incarnation requires 9 months. It requires a slow accumulation of form from a single fertilized cell, a process that limits, among other things, the complexity and age of the consciousness that can occupy the resulting body. An entity complex enough and old enough to carry 4,000 years of coherent existence simply cannot compress itself into a standard gestation. The math doesn't work. The body can't hold it. The cord bypassed the standard gestation by providing a preloaded template, an existing biological structure containing the entity's blueprint, which the host body accepted and developed around, rather than generating from scratch. The entity did not gestate. It arrived in a form the pregnancy test could confirm, already essentially complete. The 40 days of activation had been its final preparation. The body Emma had been carrying since day 43 was not growing from nothing. It was being upholstered. Their son, they called him Noah, was born at 38 weeks, perfectly healthy by every measurable standard, 8 pounds 6 ounces, eyes the particular dark that most newborns have, and that usually lightens in the first months. Noah's eyes did not lighten. He ate, he slept, in the abbreviated intervals that newborns sleep. He tracked movement, earlier than expected, much earlier than expected. Their health visitor noted it with the mild enthusiasm of a professional accustomed to proud parents and moved on. Emma noted it with something that was not quite pride and not quite alarm, and which she did not name. At 3 months, she found him awake in his cot at 3 a.m., not crying, looking at the ceiling with a quality of attention she recognized uncomfortably as contemplative. At 4 months, he said something. Not mama, not dada, not the standard phonetic inventory of a typically developing 4-month-old. A word, a complete, clearly articulated word in a register too low for a 4-month-old's anatomy to produce. Daniel, sleeping in the next room, woke and came to the door and asked what she had heard. She said, "Nothing. I thought I heard something. Go back to sleep." She did not know, at 4 months, what language it was. By 6 months, she did. A colleague at the library, a retired academic named Professor Elliot, who still came in on Thursdays to access the archive journals, was also, as it happened, a retired Near Eastern Studies scholar whose specialty was ancient Mesopotamian languages. She asked him without context whether he recognized a phrase she'd written down phonetically after Noah's 5th distinct utterance of it. He looked at her note for a long time. "Where did you hear this?" She gave a vague answer about a podcast. "It's Sumerian," he said. "Old Sumerian, not Neo-Babylonian. He paused. "It's a formal introduction, very specific register, the kind you use for a first audience with someone of significant standing. It roughly translates as, 'I have waited longer than this building has stood, and I am grateful for the convenience.'" Emma smiled. She thanked him. She went back to her desk. She drove home from work that evening in a silence that had the quality of a room in which a very large decision is being made and nobody has spoken yet. She called the support contact number from the listing sheet. The number had been disconnected. The community forum where she had found the listing was gone. The thread, the profile, the invitation-only structure, all of it cleaned from every search she ran, as thoroughly as if it had never been indexed. She sat in the car outside her house and looked at the light in Noah's room. The final ultrasound, the 37-week check, the last one before the birth, had flagged an anomaly. The technician had frowned at the screen and tilted the transducer and frowned again and then said, carefully, that the baby's positioning was unusual. Emma had asked how unusual. The technician had said she'd like to get a second opinion and left the room and came back and said everything was fine, positioning-wise, nothing to worry about. Emma had seen the screen before the technician angled it away. She had seen the face. Not a fetus in the standard 37-week presentation. A face. Complete. Adult. Pressed against the interior wall of the womb with the specific quality of someone looking through a window from inside. Eyes open. Expression. Not frightened. Not distressed. Smiling. And the lips moving, clearly, repeatedly, in a pattern she had not been able to read at the time and had pushed out of her mind through the process of labor and delivery and the first enormous weeks of Noah's presence, and which she now, sitting in the car outside her house, 6 months later, reconstructed with a precision that surprised her. 2 words. Repeated. She knew now enough Sumerian to identify the sounds, her name, and Daniel's name, in reverse. Inside the house, Daniel was giving Noah his evening bottle. Noah drank methodically and watched Daniel's face with those dark, unchanged eyes, and did not seem, by any external measure, anything other than an 8-month-old child who was slightly advanced for his age. The entity inside her son was 4,000 years old and had been waiting in a preserved cord for most of the last 5 centuries and was, by its own estimation, grateful for the convenience of the arrangement. It was not malevolent. It was not cruel. It was simply very, very old, and it had been patient, and it was here now. It knew their names, both of them, the ones they had been given at birth and the ones beneath those. The names that exist in the register of things older than language, that cannot be chosen or changed, that are discovered only by something ancient enough to read at that frequency. It knew both of those too. Emma walked inside. She put her bag down. She went to the kitchen and started dinner. Daniel brought Noah through and sat him in the high chair, and they moved around each other in the familiar choreography of their evening. And Noah watched them both with the calm, dark eyes of something that had waited 4,000 years for a room this warm. Emma put a pot on the stove. Outside, the sky went dark over Bristol the way it always did. In the ordinary lamplit kitchen, something ancient had dinner with a family it had borrowed, and it knew every name in the room, and it was, in its particular and untranslatable way, entirely at home. I want to return to something I said at the beginning. Emma and Daniel were good people. They were not reckless or greedy or contemptuous of forces they didn't understand. They were exhausted and heartbroken, and they found something that offered them what 6 years of conventional medicine could not, and they took it. And something ancient and patient and thoroughly prepared used that love, that specific, profound, entirely human love, as a door. The cord was a loophole. That is the precise word for it. Not a curse, not a punishment, not even a deception in the fullest sense. The listing had said it guarantees a pregnancy, and it did. Emma and Daniel have a child. He is healthy. He sleeps and eats and sits in his high chair and watches them with dark eyes that are not lightening. He knows their real names. He has known them longer than they have been alive. What do you do with that? What do you do with a love you feel completely, and a child that is yours in every physical sense and not yours in every other, and which knows something about you that you will never know about yourself? The entity is not malevolent. The listing had been accurate. It guarantees a pregnancy. It had been honest, in the way that very old things are sometimes honest, by telling you exactly what you are getting while declining, with elegant precision, to tell you what you are getting into. The phrase was formal. A first audience with someone of significant standing, in their kitchen, in their lamplit, ordinary house in Bristol. Noah is 8 months old. He has been waiting 4,000 years to sit at this table. Thank you for joining me tonight. My name is Alara, and I am your whisperer. I'll be here, waiting for you next time. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. I want to hear your stories. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more. This has been Karma Quietly Whispers. See you soon.